Think about the last time you looked up at the sky and saw an airplane cross overhead. Little blinking lights. A low hum. And you didn't think twice. Neither did anyone on March 8, 2014. At first, everything looked normal. A routine overnight flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. 2 pilots. 10 flight attendants. 227 passengers. A total of 239 human beings. Parents. Toddlers. A couple on their honeymoon. A man traveling home to see his newborn daughter for the first time. Clear skies. Fuel for 7 hours. No storms. No distress signals. No reason to worry. But then, something changed. Slowly. Quietly. Almost politely. The plane vanished. Not crashed. Not exploded. Vanished. As if someone reached up into the night and erased it from existence. And then the media started talking. A lot. For 2 weeks. Maybe 3. And then? They stopped. Today, most people couldn't name a single new detail from the last 5 years. Most people think the ocean swallowed the plane and that's the end of the story. But a small group of families and a handful of obsessive researchers kept asking questions. Quiet questions. Uncomfortable questions. Questions that lead to a truth the media never put on primetime. Here's what really happened to MH370. And why someone might not want you to know. Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Terminal M Gate C1. 11:30 p.m. local time, March 7, 2014. The Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777-200ER registration number 9MMRO sat at the gate like it had hundreds of times before. It was delivered new to Malaysia Airlines in 2002. 12 years old. Well maintained. The airline called it their workhorse. Passengers boarded in no particular hurry. A red-eye to Beijing. 6 hours. Most people planned to sleep. Let's walk through who was on that plane. The pilot's asterisk Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53. Married. 3 adult children. 17,865 flying hours. He'd worked for Malaysia Airlines for 33 years. Colleagues described him as boringly professional, which in aviation is the highest compliment. He'd built a flight simulator in his home. Not unusual for a senior pilot. Co-pilot Farik Abdul Hamid, 27. Engaged to be married. Relatively new, only 2,763 hours. But sharp. Polite. The kind of junior officer captains liked to mentor. The passengers asterisk 227 of them. 58% Chinese. 12 crew from Malaysia. 1 Russian. 1 Austrian. 1 Ukrainian. 1 French. 1 Canadian. 1 Indonesian. A few stories worth remembering. A man named Paul Weeks, a New Zealand miner returning from a job in Mongolia. He'd called his wife Danica the night before. Told her he loved her. Said he'd be home in 2 days. A young Chinese couple, Zhang Qiyue and her husband, traveling to Beijing for a family wedding. They'd checked 1 red suitcase. Inside, gifts for the groom. An Iranian teenager named Pouria Nur Mohammadi, 19, traveling on a stolen passport. Not a terrorist. Just a kid trying to seek asylum in Europe. He didn't even know the plane was going to Beijing when he bought the ticket. And a man named Philip Wood, an IBM executive from Texas. He'd texted his girlfriend Sarah just before boarding, asterisk next stop, Beijing. Then home. Can't wait to see you. Asterisk. Normal people. Normal flight. Normal night. Except. At 12:41 a.m., March 8, the plane lifted off. Runway 32R. Slightly delayed but nothing unusual. Air traffic control cleared them to climb to 35,000 feet. At 1:07 a.m., co-pilot Ferric radioed Kuala Lumpur Center. His exact words, "Good night, Malaysian 370. A few things about that call. First, he didn't say heavy. Most 777 pilots add heavy after the flight number to indicate the plane's wake turbulence potential. It's standard. Not required. But standard. Second, the call came slightly earlier than expected. They weren't yet at the handoff point to Vietnamese control. Ferric just checked in early. Third, that was the last voice transmission anyone ever received from Flight 370. At 1:21 a.m., 14 minutes later, the transponder stopped transmitting. Let me explain what that means. An airplane's transponder is like its digital ID badge. It broadcasts the flight number, speed, altitude, heading, and position to ground radar. When that signal stops, the plane becomes a ghost on civilian radar screens. Poof, gone. But here's the thing. You cannot turn off a transponder by accident. It's not a button you bump. It's not a circuit that fails. It's a deliberate selection, often two separate actions, to switch from normal to standby or off. In the 777 flight deck, it's a rotary dial with 4 positions. You have to turn it past 2 other settings to kill it. Someone in that cockpit chose to disappear. And at the exact same time, the aircraft's ACAR system stopped transmitting. That's the maintenance computer that sends hourly health reports back to the airline. ACARS doesn't have an on-off switch in the cockpit. You have to pull a circuit breaker to kill it. Someone pulled a circuit breaker. At 1:30 a.m., 9 minutes after the transponder died, Malaysian military radar picked up an unidentified target. Heading west. Southwest now. Crossing back over the Malay Peninsula. Then northwest toward Penang Island. Then a sharp turn. Almost perfect 180 degrees. Now heading southwest toward the Indian Ocean. No mayday. No hijack code. No radio call. Silence. The military radar operators noted the track. Didn't classify it as hostile. Didn't scramble jets. By the time anyone looked back at the logs, the plane was already 400 miles away. Here's what the world didn't know yet. The last confirmed military radar return came at 2:15 a.m. The plane was still at 35,000 feet. Still flying straight. Still in one piece. Then even military radar lost it. At 7:30 a.m., the plane was supposed to land in Beijing. At 8 a.m., families started arriving at the arrivals gate. Holding signs. Holding flowers. Holding babies the passengers had never met. At 12 p.m., Malaysia Airlines finally admitted contact lost. But no one knew what would happen next. The first week after MH370 vanished was the loudest week in aviation history. CNN ran it non-stop. The BBC cancelled regular programming. Fox News brought on former pilots, retired generals, psychic mediums, anyone with a theory. And there were so many theories. Theory 1, hijacking, but no group claimed responsibility. No demands were made. No passengers called relatives. The stolen passports on board turned out to be smuggling, not terrorism. Connected? No. Theory 2, fire. A cargo fire could disable communications. But a fire that kills the transponder and ACARS and all backup systems and allows the plane to keep flying for 7 more hours? No. Fire spreads, melts, destroys. MH370 flew like nothing was wrong. Theory 3, suicide by pilot. This one had legs. But the media handled it gently at first. Maybe too gently. Theory 4, missile strike. Unlikely. No debris field. No eyewitnesses. No military claimed responsibility. Theory 5, mechanical failure followed by ghost flight. A plane flying itself after everyone passed out from hypoxia. Possible. But ghost flights don't change course multiple times. Ghost flights don't turn 180 degrees. Here's what actually happened and when the shift happened. Search and rescue begins. 26 countries. 39 aircraft. 42 ships. The Gulf of Thailand. South China Sea. Where the plane should have been. Nothing. Not a seat cushion. Not an oil slick. Not a single floating object. Malaysia's defense minister holds a press conference. Looks tired. Says, we are looking at all possibilities. The families at the Beijing airport start crying on live television. One woman collapses. Another screams, where is my son? The first shift happens here but nobody notices yet. Malaysia releases military radar data. Reveals that the plane turned west. Flew across the peninsula. Kept flying for hours after civilian radar lost it. The world reacts with confusion. Wait, the military knew the plane had turned immediately and didn't say anything for 4 days? Malaysia's explanation, we didn't want to confuse the search effort. Confuse? You mean you watched a commercial airliner fly in the wrong direction and didn't tell anyone? This is where the first crack appears. The first hint that someone in Malaysia knew more than they were saying. Prime Minister Najib Razak holds an emergency press conference. His face is grey. He reads from a paper. Based on new satellite data, the aircraft's last confirmed position was in the southern Indian Ocean. Southern Indian Ocean. That's not near Thailand. Not near Vietnam. Not near anything. He continues, we are deeply saddened to say, this is where the flight ended. He doesn't say crashed. He doesn't say everyone died. He says ended. The families in Beijing who had watched every press conference for 8 days, who had refused to leave the airport, who had slept on chairs and prayed and held each other, some of them screamed. Some of them went silent. One man, the father of a 3-year-old boy, put his head against a glass window and didn't move for 2 hours. Here's what the media reported next. Inmarsat, the British satellite company, had recorded handshake pings between the plane and a satellite. Every hour. 7 times. After the transponder died. The plane was still alive. Still flying. Still talking to a satellite, just not to us. Those pings allowed Inmarsat's engineers to calculate 2 possible corridors. Corridor 1, north. Over Central Asia. Into Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, northern China, Thailand. Corridor 2, south. Over the southern Indian Ocean. Toward Antarctica. 2 possibilities. 1 plane. Malaysia chose the southern corridor. Here's what the media didn't emphasize, there was no wreckage. No black box ping. No physical evidence at all. The southern corridor was a mathematical probability based on how far the plane could have flown on its remaining fuel. But probability is not proof. And yet every news outlet from CNN to Al Jazeera started saying, MH370 likely crashed in the southern Indian Ocean. The northern corridor, the one where the plane could have landed somewhere, maybe intact, maybe with survivors, was quietly dropped from the conversation. No press conference asked, why south and not north? No journalist demanded, what if you're wrong? The shift happened. The world stopped asking if the plane crashed and started asking where. And that's exactly where some people wanted the conversation to go. And that's where everything took a dark turn. Let me take you back to the satellite ping data. The Inmarsat handshakes. Because the public version of the story is missing something crucial. Inmarsat's satellite number 3F1 was geostationary over the Indian Ocean. It receives signals, but it doesn't log precise positions. Instead, it tracks something called burst timing offset, basically, how long it takes a signal to go from the plane to the satellite and back. From that offset, engineers can calculate 2 things. range, distance from the satellite, and Doppler shift, frequency change caused by the plane's movement relative to the satellite. Inmarsat's analysis gave two arcs. But here's what the public never understood: the northern arc required the plane to fly over some of the most heavily militarized airspace in the world: India, Pakistan, China, Russia. If the plane had flown north, someone would have seen it. Military radar would have tracked it. Countries would have scrambled jets. No one did. That's why investigators chose south. Makes sense, right? Except in 2016, 2 years after the crash, a French investigative journalist named Florence de Changy published a report. She'd obtained classified documents from the French Air Safety Bureau, BEA. France had been involved because one passenger was French. Those documents revealed something staggering. The Inmarsat data had not conclusively ruled out the northern corridor. In fact, one of the lead engineers had privately told investigators that the northern arc's Doppler data was within the margin of error of the southern arc, meaning both were technically possible. So why did Malaysia publicly commit to south? Because the northern arc would have required overflying India's Nicobar Islands, which have military radar. India was asked to check their logs. India said they saw nothing. But here's the detail that got buried: India took 6 weeks to answer that request. 6 weeks. By then, the southern arc narrative was fixed. The search ships were already moving south. The media had already moved on. And then 2016 again. Leaked FBI documents. Remember Captain Zahari's home flight simulator? The FBI analyzed deleted data from that simulator. Found a flight path that he'd practiced. The coordinates matched almost perfectly with the southern corridor's farthest reach. A spot in the southern Indian Ocean so remote that no search plane, no ship, no satellite had ever visited. Malaysia received the FBI report. Classified it. Never released it publicly. A journalist from The Atlantic eventually obtained a summary. But by then, 2017, the story was old. The media had stopped covering MH370 entirely unless new debris washed ashore. Let me tell you about the debris. Between 2015 and 2018, more than 30 pieces of confirmed 777 wreckage were found on beaches from Mozambique to Madagascar to South Africa. A wing flap. A cabin interior panel. A piece of the fuselage with a Malaysia Airlines logo still visible. Each piece was analyzed. Each piece was consistent with a high-energy water impact. Each piece told the same story: the plane went down somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. But here's the detail that breaks the official story. Oceanographers, independent ones, not paid by Malaysia or Inmarsat, ran drift models. If the plane crashed at the official final position, 38 degrees south, 89 degrees east, debris should have washed up on the west coast of Australia within 6 to 12 months. Not Africa. Australia's west coast found exactly 0 confirmed pieces. Africa found dozens. The only way debris reaches Africa from that latitude is if the crash site is actually hundreds of miles west of the official location, or if the wreckage drifted for much longer than the models predicted. Either way, the official crash zone is wrong. Not close. Wrong. Now let me tell you about the families. There's a man named K.S. Narendran. His son, Jeevatai, was a passenger. 23 years old. A bright kid. Loved video games and his mother's cooking. Narendran didn't accept the official story. He taught himself oceanography, satellite physics, aviation law. He runs a blog called MH370, The True Story, for 1,000 pages of analysis. He's found inconsistencies in the radar logs, the fuel calculations, the press conference timestamps. He has publicly accused the Malaysian government of covering up a hijacking that ended in a controlled ditching, not a crash. He has been ignored by mainstream media. Then there's Sarah Bajk, partner of Philip Wood, the IBM executive. She flew to Kuala Lumpur. Demanded answers. Sat through every court hearing. She says, *, they treated us like we were stupid. Like we wouldn't notice the lies. Asterisk. She noticed. She documented every contradiction. She built a spreadsheet comparing every official statement from March 8 to March 30, found 47 direct contradictions. 47. The heaviest moment came in 2018. Malaysia released the final official report, all 822 pages. The conclusion? Asterisk, the team is unable to determine the cause of the disappearance. Asterisk. Unable. After 4 years. $200 million. Dozens of countries. 1,000 interviews. 83 pieces of debris. Unable. The families read that word. Unable, and something broke. Not hope. They'd lost hope years ago. Something else broke. Trust. The final thread of belief that the people in charge, the airlines, the governments, the media, were telling them the truth. Because what came next, no one expected. The official search ended in May 2018. The private search run by a company called Ocean Infinity ended June 2018 after finding nothing but an old shipwreck. No more ships. No more planes. No more funding. The families kept meeting. Every March 8. In Kuala Lumpur. In Beijing. In small hotel conference rooms. They bring photos of their loved ones. They share meals. They cry. Then they go back to their hotel rooms and check the news one more time. In 2019, Malaysia offered a settlement money in exchange for dropping all legal claims. Some families accepted. Some didn't. The ones who refused called the settlement a silencing fee. In 2021, a British aerospace engineer named Richard Godfrey published a new analysis using weak signal propagation, a technique that tracks radio wave disturbances. He claimed to have found 50 distinct points along a new flight path, ending at a specific coordinate, 33 degrees south, 95 degrees east. That's 400 miles north of the official crash zone. Godfrey presented his findings to the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. They thanked him. Did nothing. In 2022, a fisherman off the coast of Western Australia found a large piece of white debris with rivets. Reported it. Malaysian officials said they'd look into it. They never got back to him. In 2023, China quietly ended its own search coordination. No press release. No announcement. Just silence. Today, 2026. 12 years since the disappearance. The Malaysian government still lists MH370 as missing, presumed lost. The families still don't have bodies to bury. The black box, if it's there, ran out of battery in April 2014. 11 years ago. Here's the question that journalists stopped asking in 2015. Why did the media stop covering this? Not a conspiracy. Just examine it. The disappearance of MH370 is the greatest aviation mystery in history. Bigger than Amelia Earhart. Bigger than the Bermuda Triangle. A 777, the safest commercial jet ever built, vanished with 239 people on board. And yet, a missing teenager in Aruba gets more cable news coverage today than MH370. Why? Maybe because there's no new footage. No villain. No trial. Just a cold case without a body. Or maybe, and this is what the families believe, maybe because the truth would be too uncomfortable. Maybe because it would require admitting that a commercial pilot can erase an airplane. That radar systems have blind spots. That governments will prioritize reputation over truth. Maybe because the truth is simple and devastating, we don't know. We don't know what happened. We don't know where the plane is. We don't know why. And we've stopped trying. Let me leave you with 3 things most people don't know. First, asterisk, the very last satellite ping from MH370 occurred at 8:19 a.m. 8 minutes after the plane should have landed. That ping was a log-on request, a signal the plane sends when it's being powered up on the ground after a flight. Someone turned something on. 8 minutes after landing time. In the southern Indian Ocean? Or somewhere else? Second asterisk in 2024, a retired Malaysian Air Force general named to avoid retaliation gave an anonymous interview to a German podcast. He claimed military radar tracks were deliberately ignored during the first hour because nobody wanted to admit a commercial plane had violated sovereign airspace. He said, "We knew where it was. We just didn't act." Asterisk. Third asterisk, there is a spot in the southern Indian Ocean, 34 degrees S, 93 degrees east, that has never been searched. It's outside the original search zone. It's 4,000 meters deep. And a 2025 ocean current model from the University of Western Australia placed that spot as the most likely origin point for the African debris. Nobody's going to look. Not enough money. Not enough pressure. Not enough media attention. Most people missed these details, but now you know the real story. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for staying with the story long after the media left. Here's what you can do next. 1 * Google MH370 family support. There are still petitions. Still fundraisers. Still letter-writing campaigns to the Malaysian and Australian governments. They need voices. 2 * Share this video. Not for me, for them. For the 239 people who never came home. For the parents who still leave a light on. 3 * The next time you hear someone say MH370 crashed in the ocean and that's that, ask them, how do you know? Because the answer is almost always, I don't know. I just heard it on the news. Asterisk. And now you know more than the news ever told you. The plane is still out there. Somewhere. Waiting to be found. The only question left, who's still looking? Subscribe for more stories the media stopped telling. Comment, what's your theory on MH370? Watch next, the flight that disappeared twice.